Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar about the Childcare Challenge grant. It is the first of its kind, so we're all kind of learning together. It's pretty exciting grant opportunity. So again, thank you for your time and interest in this. I want to welcome you. My name is Kathy Leggett. My position is the Future Ready Iowa Policy Advisor at Iowa Workforce Development. So I'm going to help take you through some of the information about this grant. Before we get started, I do want to also introduce Allison Hanrahan. So Allison, say hello.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us.
Allison is our fantastic grants, I don't know if I call her guru, administrator, or whatever, but you know, certainly has probably helped a lot of you already and helps us facilitate this process. So as a contact person, and we'll help take you through some of the information a little bit later in our presentation. Then I also want to thank Molly Elder. Hello, Molly.
Hi, Kathy. Just to let you know, I'm also joined by Greg Vargas on our communications team, so he'll help with tech support as necessary.
Perfect. So we have Molly and Greg to help us from the communications team at IWD. And during this webinar, David Steen will also join us. He leads our legal team at IWD, and he's a great resource to answer some of the questions that you're likely to come up with. So he has a previous commitment right now, but then will join us when he can. We're going to get ready to go. Just also after introductions, I wanted to let you know a little bit about how this will roll. I always do a brief Future Ready Iowa overview when I start this, just because this grant is connected with Future Ready Iowa. Some of you may be very familiar with it. Some of you may not have any idea what Future Ready Iowa is. So I want to tie it to the grant program with a few slides. Then I'll get into, you know, the kind of the information about the grant, and we'll do how you apply. And then we will also do leave time for questions and answers at the end, where we would just ask you to put your questions in the Q&A or chat, because Molly will help put those on a document for us, and then we can read through them and answer them one by one. I also do want to let you know that there are very likely questions you will have that we do not have the answers to, that we have to seek another resource to figure it out. And again, especially because this is a new grant, but those, you always come up with great things that we haven't thought about. So just know that if there are those questions, we'll work to get those answered in the next 24 to 48 hours and posted and out to everyone. So that's kind of how we're going to handle it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. Additionally, I guess I will say, because someone typically asks, Molly will get the slides that are used today and the recording of the webinar posted on the website. Usually takes Molly about 24 hours. Is that about right?
Yes, for us to get the video onto our YouTube page and posted, it takes about 24 hours. And we will post it on the Future Ready Iowa website. So for the Childcare Challenge, it'll be futurereadyiowa.gov/childcarechallenge.
Okay, so I think we're ready to go here. So we'll take it away. Here's my, again, quick overview about Future Ready Iowa. And just to those of you who have not maybe been on a webinar with me before, or a presentation, I do talk a little bit fast. So feel free to enter your questions in as we go. And like I said, we'll get to them at the end, or if you need a repeat on anything. So Future Ready Iowa is Iowa's goal to have 70% of Iowans in the workforce to have education and training beyond high school by 2025. Now you're probably like, what does this have to do with what we're talking about today? And I will link it together quickly. But there are several reasons, and a lot of work went into how are we going to reach this goal. Quick overview when I'm doing it, I like to give a few reasons. So why is Iowa even doing this? Why are we focused on this goal? Because it's projected that 68% of the jobs in Iowa are going to require some type of training beyond high school by 2025. Because we have a very large skills gap in Iowa, meaning we have a lot of jobs that require education and training beyond high school, especially in the up to a 2-year degree, whether it's a credential, a license, a apprenticeship, a certificate, an associate's degree. We have the majority of our jobs, that's what they require in Iowa, but the majority of our folks don't have that education. So we were really trying to close that skills gap and then to better align education and workforce to meet employer needs. And trust me, again, I'm getting there. So how do we get there? 5 strategies were identified by a group of folks that you kind of saw represented on that first slide that I showed. And so these 5 strategies about how we could work to get toward that 70% goal I've listed them really briefly here on the screen. But this grant is related to some of those strategies. One was putting some funding resources or sources out there to help work in a lot of areas to get to this goal. So examples were the Last Dollar Scholarship, which provides tuition for individuals in Iowa who are obtaining up to an associate's degree in high demand jobs. Another was the Employer Innovation Fund, which the Childcare Challenge is now part of. And this was a matching fund to help employers get involved and support education and training for the employees they needed and help Iowans who have barriers get that education and training. Now, as you'll see when I go through this, the Childcare Challenge is an extension of this Employer Innovation Fund. We are also working to address number 2, it basically is kind of wraparound or addressing barriers. There are a lot of barriers to individuals getting education and training beyond high school. So that's one of the strategies is how are we addressing those barriers. And then I want to skip to the grassroots efforts, number 5, because I really see this Childcare Challenge Fund as related to number 1, the need for funding to support things. Number 2, how are we going to address barriers? And number 3, grassroots efforts. And then I'll kind of bring it together here. So it has been, which long known, which I'm sure you know better than anyone, the challenges that Iowa has faced with enough quality affordable childcare available, and it hits workforce and Future Ready Iowa on a few things. We know we need more training for childcare professionals to get more people in the field. We know there are a lot of other things that go along with that, benefits, wages, all of that. But we also know that our employers lose out on the opportunity of Iowans who could work in these high demand jobs because childcare isn't available in a lot of places or in enough numbers in a lot of places. So the Childcare Challenge Fund, this first grant here is designed to try and take a step toward helping increasing the availability of that quality, affordable childcare for working Iowans. So the grant purpose here is to encourage and enable businesses, nonprofit organizations, and consortiums to establish local childcare facilities and increase the availability of that quality, affordable childcare. So to support this work, the fund it's a competitive grant process to support community and regional initiatives. So again, you go back to Future Ready Iowa, it's grassroots because what you need in one area isn't necessarily what you need in another area. So we want organizations working together to meet local needs, and we want to address this workforce barrier. So here are eligible applicants. That includes businesses, nonprofits, and consortiums. And I put the definition from a consortium here, meaning 2 or more employers or businesses, at least one of which must be a private employer. So that's who we're looking for to apply. I've had a lot of questions come in, as has Allison, about can a school district apply? Can this organization apply? Can an in-home childcare provider apply? So the answer to that is basically yes, but you have to have employer partnership. And as you can see, the last bullet point on this slide is if an employer is not the lead applicant, applicants are required to include a letter of commitment from an employer as a key partner with the application submission. This is because it is part of the Employer Innovation Fund, and really one of the primary priorities is that we collaborate between the organizations that exist, and we engage employers in these efforts because this is a workforce issue. So we want the engagement and support of employers on childcare and in the development and within the childcare issues. So also wanted to point out that IWD does encourage applicants to cultivate partnerships. That doesn't mean you have to have a partnership. If you're an employer and you're like, I'm trying to do this to provide childcare for my employees, that's awesome. That's great. But just to say, we do want people to think about in terms of partnerships to help provide the best services available, and collaborations are always a great way to do that. So on to what are the eligible grant expenses. So the funding for this grant is to support new construction of a childcare facility, the rehabilitation of an existing structure as a childcare facility, or retrofitting or repurposing an existing structure. So for use in the childcare facility. So this is very much focused on the structure for the childcare facility in this Childcare Challenge grant. Funds cannot be used for administrative expenses of operating the program or implementing the project. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as I go on. But you got to keep in mind, these are the primary, this is what this particular grant is here to support. Not to say that any of the other things, the administration is important, who runs it is important, all of those things are important. And I'm hopeful that down the road we'll have other funding opportunities that address different challenges, but this particular fund is for these purposes. So it is a matching grant. I want to spend a little time on that too, because it is a little confusing sometimes, especially because if you're familiar with a lot of the IWD grants that we have done through Future Ready Iowa, those have been, some of them have been reimbursement grants. So this is a matching grant. And so funds, some type of funds have to be put up by the applicant or the applicant and their partners, and you're asking for a match to those funds. This is not a reimbursement grant. That would be if we were saying, spend the money first, and then once you show us you successfully spent it and achieved this, we're gonna reimburse you for that. This is not a reimbursement grant, it's a matching. So this funding that is provided is in addition to the private dollars that the applicant or consortium is putting up for expenses to support the completion of a project. So for example, I'm not sure this will be a great example, but I'm hopeful it will be helpful. If you have a group working together to build a center, and your group, obviously it's a very expensive proposition, but for part of your plan, you have $100,000 raised to do the heating, cooling, lighting, or some of the construction. And then you are putting that up, and you're asking the state to match that $100,000. And perhaps what you're asking that match for is the furniture that's needed to put in the classrooms or in the nursery or whatever. And so that's how it works. It's not a replacement of what you have spent. It's in addition to for expenses that are still related to the project. So what can be used to meet the organization match? This grant allows private and employer dollars. When you're talking just cash, the grant cannot match state and federal funds. So if you're putting up cash for the match, you have to ensure that it is not cash from other state or federal funds. And that would include other federal grants or state grants as well. It has to be private or employer dollars that are being put up. This grant does also allow the use of in-kind funds to be put up for the match, the organizational match. So for example, labor and materials can be used. So as you have a group working together and you have somebody, maybe you have in your community, a construction company that's saying, you know what, we know this is so important, so we're gonna provide X amount of labor and materials for this project. They would document that. That can also be used as a match. So you can do in-kind, but again, not administrative expenses. And we've had a lot of questions about this too, so I want to try and make it clear. And please know, again, it's not because we understand that somebody has to organize these efforts. We understand that somebody has to run it. We totally understand that. It's just that the way that this legislation is written, we cannot do that. So administrative expenses cannot be used as the match for this grant. So I did put under there construction crew labor costs. So that would be an example of something that could be put up. Architectural design, like the donation of all of the architectural design of the building could be something that could be put up. So that just to kind of give you an idea of this. the last bullet point that I have here is that the dollars or in kind that you are putting up as a match has to be something that's available to you now, but not spent yet. And so I know these projects can be just long-term, and perhaps you had 6 months ago some in-kind work done on the project that was worth $50,000. That we can't have that be used as your match because it's already been done. And same thing as maybe you had some private dollars come in and you spent the $100,000 last year on some things. And we can't use that as what your match is. Your match that you're sending in with this grant application is dollars or in kind that you have available as part of the project right now, but you have not spent it yet. And you're going to spend it, and actually you'll be able to spend it and meet the timeline, which I'll talk about in just a minute, which is June 30th, 2021. I want to let people know that David has joined us. David, if you just want to unmute and say hello.
Hello, David Steen. I am attorney for Iowa Workforce Development, and I'm here to try to answer questions or assist in answering questions as they come up.
Perfect, thank you. The other thing I guess I did want to say is as we're going through this, Allison, David, if it's like a, hey, I've talked about this, but I missed something, or you want to add something, just pipe in, please, just do it. Okay, so on to, I wanted to talk a little more about administrative expenses, because again, this is where we get a lot of questions, but those expenses are not allowed for the grant expenses or to be used as matching funds. So for example, the expense of a child care director or center staff, absolutely acknowledge and know this is an expense. This is not something that can be put up as matching dollars, and this is not something that can be requested that the state grant dollars pay for in this grant. Same thing, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, like the expense of a project coordinator for the whole project, managing the construction contracts, those type of things. We certainly understand that that's needed in a lot of projects. That is not an allowable expense for this particular grant. And you cannot use that to put that up as your match. We had saying that this group hired a coordinator, we're paying them however much money, and we're using that as an in-kind for the match. That is not allowed in this grant. So hopefully that helps clear up a few of those questions. The other piece here that I wanted to, and this is all from the grant notice and everything that's available on the website, but I wanted to make sure that it is clear that you do have to demonstrate that you have the in-kind service and goods or the dollars as the match available. And so you can read this. This will be available. David, is there anything you want to add to this or just highlight so it makes sense for everyone?
Well, the bottom line is we need proof of the funds. And so a statement from a bank would definitely suffice, some sort of official statement. But also, a certified public accountant has a certain duty to fiduciary duty in order to be able to provide your financial information and some integrity duties there. So we will accept an affidavit, a signed sworn affidavit from a certified public accountant stating that the funds exist, they're liquid and available, and they're secured. So those options will work. If you have something in between there that you want to know if this will be sufficient documentation, let us know and let us have a look. We want to work with you on that. But we do need to be able to show that the funds are there, that they exist, and that they are available in order to be able to provide the promise of a match.
Yep, perfect. Thank
Hey,
you.
David, while we're on this one, I've had a few questions. Would proof of a line of credit or access to a loan, like pre-approval, be sufficient evidence for matched dollars?
That we would definitely need the documentation specifically from the lending institution. Public accountant giving us that information wouldn't necessarily be as valid in that situation, because we need to be able to see exactly what you got and what the terms are there, if there's some sort of conditions or something that would limit your ability to access that. But yeah, if you've got access to those funds in that manner, that should suffice.
And one more question along those lines, David, since you jumped on, aren't you glad you got on here right now? is when it's in kind, since we are accepting in kind as the match, and let's say, for example, it is in kind from an architect, company or a construction company or a lumber, is the documentation from them saying that they have donated, or how is that best handled?
Well, I think it's going to be hard to give an overarching guidance on that because there's so many different forms that could take. So, I mean, the bottom line is we are going to need some sort of documentation, some way to quantify what's taking place there and what the funding scenario is. What the money looks like, because we've got to have something that we can match, and we got to be able to prove that we had documentation of it. And that it wasn't just a theoretical, hey, somebody's putting in time on this, hey, somebody's putting in expertise, and we're matching it. We need to be able to show dollar for dollar. Yeah, I can't give you a great guidance on that because there's so many different forms that could take. But please keep an eye on the fact that you do need to provide us documentation. And in the example you gave there, some sort of a statement, some sort of a invoice, rundown of work, something that would give us the ability to be able to quantify what's taking place.
Very good, thank you. And then to point everybody's attention to the bottom line, applicants need to plan to expend all private funds first. That is the way the matching grants work. And I'll be at the timeline in just a moment. But the way it works is what you put up as the match, you deplete and spend all of that first. Then you show documentation to IWD that is done. And then IWD sends a check for what you were awarded for the match. And then you complete that, finish the project or whatever part of the project is with those dollars. So, okay, so moving on, how much funding is available? Right now, we have $1.2 million that the legislature appropriated in the last session that is to be used between these two funds, the Employer Innovation Fund and the Childcare Challenge. So I do not have an exact amount of how much is for each one. I think both applications are open now. Both will be due on the same day and announced the same day. So just know that there's that much available between the two of them. The maximum request that you can request in your application is $100,000. I didn't put this on here, but the minimum request is $5,000. We don't want to have an application submitted that's less than $5,000. And then how are they made available? I think I kind of just talked to that, but just to review, once those private funds in kind or dollars are documented as spent, then that documentation comes to IWD and IWD issues a check for the cash amount. For this round, those private funds in kind or dollars have to be spent by June 30th, 2021. And that when you spend that, that's when you can request your state match. It is a bit of a short time frame, and that's just due to coronavirus. We had other workforce grants we had to get out this fall. So this timeline is a little bit shorter than would typically happen. So just know that one of the things we're going to be looking for applications is are you demonstrating that you can get this done in this time frame? Fingers crossed, and I hope that the legislature will fund this again. And if they do that in this session they're in currently, then we're able to open another grant opportunity, which would probably open in July, August at the latest, as soon as a bill is signed, the governor is signed, and funding is available. So just know that I'm hopeful there will be more opportunities in not too long, because if you're in a project that you're really just getting going and maybe you're not at a place where you can do this yet, just know that hopefully and stay in touch that other opportunities will come up and you will be ready and be able to have that and have a little more time to spend that private match. So applications are due February 12th. That is at 11:59 p.m. And then we will notify those who are awarded on February 19th. So we try and do a quick turnaround so that you can get going and know you have the funds if you were awarded. So I think that I already just went through. So I think just more information there. You do have, so when you draw down your state fund by June 30th, 2021, once you get those state funds, you have 12 months to spend those state funds. So that gives you a little more time to finish that project. So anyway, that's how that works. You can certainly let us know if you have questions about that. How to apply. This is an online application. You have to go through iowagrants.gov to submit an application. We cannot accept emailed paper copies of applications. So that's another reason we want to do this. And Allison, in a few minutes, will be taking you through that process to make sure that you have an idea of how to do that. And we are very much available for technical support if you need assistance figuring out how to log in or anything like that. If you have not done a grant through iowagrants.gov before, you have to register before you can actually get in the system to complete your grant application. So just my request to you is to, if you think you're going to apply, get in and register as soon as possible, just because if you wait till the last minute, that just creates a challenge to get the approval, and then you just get in to look at the documents, and then you may have questions, and just running out of time can happen. So if you register and you don't do an application, that's fine. There's nothing lost, and registering only takes a few minutes. So I just urging you to do that more ahead of time than wait till the last minute. The website is there. I also want to point, and I'll show you examples of these, that we do have appendices that we've put together, hopefully to help you, guide you through everything possible with submitting a grant through iowagrants.gov. So many of you have maybe seen this page already. This is not iowagrants.gov. This is on our Future Ready Iowa website. And if you go to www.futurereadyiowa.gov, on the front page, you can see a link to the Childcare Challenge. So you can just click on that box. This will come up. And you can also link to Iowa Grants from here, but it also have all of our appendices that give you guidance. So the frequently asked questions, let me go to the next one. This is Appendix A. I highly recommend that you utilize this as you're even thinking about, do we want to do an application? This is going to show you the type of information you're going to have to provide in that online application. So you're maybe doing a look at that first to say, do we meet this? Can we provide this? So this is a really good guide as you're going through the application. It'll follow it quite closely, the online application. Appendix C is the scoring rubric, and this is going to tell you the amount of points that are available and the different parts of the application, and really shows you what you need to include in order to get the score high and get the points for this particular funding opportunity. So again, recommending highly that you utilize this when you're preparing your grant. And then I'm going to hand it over to Allison here, where she's going to talk about getting into iowagrants.gov and a few more of those technical aspects of the process. So Allison, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Kathy. So yes, I am here for your iowagrants.gov needs. We have included with our grant documents step-by-step instructions of how to create a new user account if you've not been in Iowa Grants before. If you've previously been into Iowa Grants to apply for other state funding opportunities or with other programs, you can click on that returning users sign in here. And once you've clicked in on that, there is a forgot password and forgot username option. We really try to make sure that we're not duplicating user accounts for the same person. And so please look through those screenshots if you're getting in to register. If you need additional assistance, I am your go-to person for that. And then Kathy, I think you can go to the next slide. Okay, and then I just wanted to kind of show you the forms that are required with your application for the Child Care Challenge Fund. So once you're in Iowa Grants and have started an application for this funding opportunity, these are going to be the requirements listed. I spoke with an applicant yesterday. She had a few questions about the minority impact statement. I just kind of wanted to touch on this quick, that is state data and that is not a scored component of your application. I can try and update that as a question and answer on Iowa grants, but that minority impact statement is not scored. It's truly just data that goes back to the state on how your projects are going to support minority populations in Iowa. And so some of those things are required by Iowa grants, and those are the cover sheet, general information, and then the minority impact statement. The remaining forms on here are going to be required more for the IWD funding opportunity, and those things would be scored. So just a few notes on that. And then there is a way, just make sure that as you go through that you submit over here to the right, there's a submit button that's going to submit your application. Okay, and then I also wanted to share that we have provided the required Child Care Challenge Fund budget spreadsheet as an appendices, and this is a required attachment with your application in Iowa grants. We do have some examples throughout the budget spreadsheet here. So I've seen some questions come through about equipment. We do kind of have some examples listed there on this spreadsheet, supplies and materials. I know Kathy talked through that, you know, labor wages for construction could be included on the private dollar match, but not on the state grant side. So you'll see that's why that column is blocked out on this one, because IWD is not able to cover labor wages, correct, Kathy, for the construction crew.
David, you can jump in, but I think actually I'm glad you brought that up, because I do believe that's something they could ask for. If they are putting up $50,000 in the cost of construction, to me that would be a covered cost. But David, I don't want to be speaking out of turn.
No, I agree. I think it'd be an in-kind contribution that would qualify for a match. If it's going directly toward, you know, the either retrofit or construction of a facility for this purpose.
Okay, so just to clarify that they could list that in any three of those columns, and I can correct that on the budget spreadsheet and revise that and reattach it to Iowa grants. So I'll take care of that today.
Perfect.
But this spreadsheet is intended to calculate all of your columns for you into formulas. So if you are adding or deleting lines, just be aware and watch for your subtotals and totals on the spreadsheet before you submit, and make sure that those are correct. You know, even if it means just doing the hard math and deleting the formulas out of the spreadsheet. And then I just wanted to show you that there is a way when you are looking at the funding opportunity in Iowa grants. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, we are posting submitted questions and responses publicly as we get responses to those questions. So if you've submitted a question and you've not heard back from me through email, or if you've submitted a question in Iowa grants, just know that we are working to get those responses to you. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Kathy, I can show everyone. You do not have to be signed into Iowa grants to ask a question or to see the questions, but in order to ask a question, you do have to be signed in to your username. So once you're signed in, if you want to post a question directly on the Iowa Grants site, something that you think maybe a lot of childcare facilities may have the same question, you are welcome to ask a question through Iowa Grants or to me directly through email. I post these on Iowa Grants. If they come through my email, I post them to Iowa Grants so that other potential applicants can have access to the same information at the same time.
Okay, that's our really kind of brief overview of how to apply and some of the specifics of the grant. We intentionally tried to do that quickly or not provide so much information so that we would have time for questions and answers. So we're ready for that now. And Molly, are you able to help us with that?
Yes, I have some questions ready. So some of these we may have covered, but just make sure that we've covered all of our questions. The first one is, can we use the funds for equipment for classrooms?
Yes.
Okay. The next one, can a land purchase be used as a match for the request if it is for a center that is currently under construction?
David, do we need to think about that, or do you?
Could you state it again? Because I'm trying to get the sequence of events here. This is a project that's currently underway.
So the question, if it is for a center construction site, so I assume the question is that the construction site is already in progress.
Well, the key is it needs to be new investment. So if it's not new investment, if it's investment that's already taken place, it wouldn't be eligible to be applied now and then matched. So, you know, the sequence of events there, it's difficult to say for sure if they've already spent the money for the actual construction or if they're just in progress, but new investment is the key. So when you're applying, we need to know what the new investment is going to be, what funds are raised for new investment in the project.
Okay, great. Next question. So we are currently a child care center and we want to add a fire alarm system as well as convert a room for child care. Can we apply? So they would like to add a fire alarm system and convert an existing room for child care purposes. Can they apply?
So I'm going to take a shot at this and then David chime in. I think, yes, you can apply. One of the key things, and I failed to point this out, meant to, but I didn't have it written on my slides, so I forgot, is one of the items that you will see in the scoring rubric, and one of the things that you have to address in the grant is how is this project going to increase capacity for childcare, because that is the focus of this, is how do we get more slots available for individuals to take advantage of so that they can engage in the workforce. So there's a part in the grant that talks about how many children and / families, and maybe children families, are served now, and how many is this project going to be able to increase that by. And then we also have a project cost per child, just to give us an idea. And it doesn't mean if you have a low cost per child that you're automatically funded and a high cost you're not, because there are a lot of variables in that. But we do need to see, like, for the investment, how many increased slots, how many increased kids are going to be able to, and families, access childcare for that. So I think, yes, you can make an application, but just know that primarily this is looking at how can we increase slots.
Yep, absolutely. And I don't know a better way to say it than yes, we're looking to increase the state's capacity, the state's supply of open daycare slots available for parents that need it. I mean, that's the shortage there is what is attempting to be addressed by this grant opportunity. So while improvements and expansions that are unrelated to the census of a particular daycare are probably positive things and can certainly be submitted as an application, please know that if they're not increasing capacity and we're not heading toward more openings and opportunities for people to be able to find a place to engage with daycare in their area, then they're going to be less likely to be approved applications.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question. Can we use either the original raised funds and or the grant funds to purchase a building for retrofitting?
Original raised funds or grant funds to purchase.
So when you say original raised funds, I think we're talking about the funds that they're going to put up to be matched. That's how I'm interpreting that. And yeah, that's what we want to have happen is getting a hold of either a facility to be retrofit or a facility to be built out in order to increase that capacity. So that is what we're looking. That's basically states what the project is here.
Okay, next question. Can money be used for the new construction of an outdoor play place? So this is at an existing center, and can the money be used for a new play place?
I think this goes back to I didn't mean to interrupt you, David. Goes back to the capacity issue that the grant is this particular grant is to increase the capacity, slots, opportunities for families to have quality, affordable childcare. So if it's related to that, I guess, but I'm not sure how that's related.
It doesn't go to the intent of the grant, at least on first glance here. There may be some way in which the construction of a new construction of an outdoor play space increases capacity in one way or another. You know, I know kids in large centers can rotate throughout the day, and sometimes having an additional place for some children to be while other children are doing something else, possibly it is increasing capacity. So we need you to expand upon that in the application. But I would say that at first glance, construction of an outdoor play space, if not increasing the census for that particular facility or a daycare operation, is unlikely to be what we're intending for these grant funds.
Okay, next question. If a new center is being built, would the costs associated with recruitment and training of new childcare staff be allowable as an ask?
No. And again, we all completely understand the need for that. That's a whole nother area of addressing this childcare challenge. But this grant in particular is for the building, the space, the things like that, and not for training and recruitment of staff.
Okay, next question. And this question involves an expenditure by the school district to be used for roofing, HVAC, a new boiler in a building. And the question is, will a vote by the school board for these specific expenditures be sufficient for the grant? They have designated a certain amount in 2021. Can this be a statement from the superintendent of schools and school board?
Okay, so I think what I'm seeing here is we've got a building that is going to be retrofit for a daycare and is not being used for one at this time. I think that's what I'm seeing here, and that the school board is going to is authorized the expenditures in order to do improvements on that building. And if so, I think we still need to see proof that the funds are there, you know, and those funds need to be expended before the funds are matched from the Child Care Challenge Fund. So, you know, still going to need probably some more documentation there, but that's definitely a good start as far as showing what's trying to be done, if I'm interpreting that correctly. If you're retrofitting a building or if that's a building that isn't currently housing a daycare.
David, one question in addition I want to ask on that is, do we need to have some type of clarity that these are not state or federal dollars?
Yeah, we do. They can't be state or federal dollars that we're matching. Now, with the school board, you know, those are going to come, I believe, from your local property taxes, if I understand how that works correctly. But if it is state or federal funds that are being used for that, then that's going to be a different story because we cannot match those.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
The next question, is about a donation that is made to the center. Can a donation of kitchen equipment be used for the match based on its value? So this is kitchen equipment to prepare food for the childcare enrollees.
My initial take on that question is yes, but David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we need a little more information about, what's being donated and what it's being used for and how it impacts the capacity of a
Capacity.
facility.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's going to be an in-kind donation. So certainly it is not somehow, prohibited as an item that can be matched. But I think we need more information about how that relates to the facility, how it increases capacity, and how it goes toward the spirit of the grant opportunity.
And this one is about, I guess, the stipulation of the grant. Is there going to be a focus or a set aside for small communities similar to some of the grants from IEDA's programs? So will there be a focus or a set aside for small communities?
I would not say that per se there is a focus or a set aside. I would not say that's the case. However, I will say that the priority here is to close some of what they call these childcare deserts, or to address these gaps in our state where there's a lot less opportunity for people to find a childcare facility with openings that they need in the time slots they need for them to be able to work. So that's going to be the priority. And I would say that the best likelihood, so long as we get the applicants from those areas, is that those are going to be the areas that are most impacted, because there aren't childcare deserts necessarily in some of our larger metro areas, or not to the significant degree that there is in some of the smaller populated areas, more sparsely populated areas. So I think the intent of the grant opportunity is going to naturally probably emphasize some of those areas, but I cannot tell you that there is a set aside.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is that specifically exactly like what David was mentioning, that is part of your application, is documentation of the need and the barriers and that type of information, and how your project is able to address that desert or that need or those barriers. So that's something that's probably looked at, rather than where are you, it's what's the need and how are you going to be able to address it.
Okay, next question. Just to clarify, building or opening a new childcare facility will be prioritized for this grant. Is this correct?
It is eligible for this grant. I don't know that opening a new or building is prioritized over renovating or taking an existing building and creating a new space there, or adding. But it is absolutely an eligible project. Or how would you add anything?
Yeah, no, I think I understand what's being stated there, and yes, I mean, again, the bottom line is trying to increase the capacity, trying to decrease the scarcity, and address the shortage that's taking place in the state. So, I mean, building or opening a new childcare facility is definitely heading in the right direction. So is retrofitting a building to expand one, so yeah, I think you're on the right track there. As long as you're not taking it to mean that you have to build a brand new building and open a brand new daycare, or you are not meeting with the intent of the grant opportunity, because that wouldn't be accurate.
Okay, next question. And this is a question about hvagrants.gov. If you are a community development or if you're part of a community development or grant writing organization and already have an hvagrants.gov account, and you're hired to write a grant for an applicant, do you suggest we use our existing hvagrant.gov account, or do we register a new login for the applicant?
I can answer that one. So I think that's Joshua Larrabee asking. Joshua, and for anyone who's in a similar situation, a couple options. I can actually connect you internally, your account, with additional organizations. So if you email me and say, hey, I need to be connected to an additional organization, that would help show that your application is coming from the required organization or the organization that you're intending to apply for. So that's one thing. But since we do have a lot of you know, kind of consortiums working together, Kathy and David, if it's not the child care center itself applying, do we need any kind of statement just saying like applying on behalf of XYZ child care center, or is there anything that needs to be explained in the application process if it shows, you know, the city of, I'm just going to say the city of Oskaloosa, for example, or just trying to think of examples like that.
Well, the best way I can say it would be, please, applicants, do us a favor and make it crystal clear who the legal entity is that is doing the application. Because we all know that it can get a little muddy between, you know, different entities and, you know, different levels of government, and somebody may submit an application, they intend it to be on behalf of a certain entity, but it's in their name, vice versa. So please, just try to be as explicit as you can. The legal entity, and I mean, when we're talking, you know, a daycare business, I mean, how are you registered with the Secretary of State? Let us know. That way we can be sure to be awarding the grant funds to the appropriate entity, and you don't end up with additional problems down the road trying to prove where they went or on behalf of who, you know, which I don't even know all the parameters of that. That's between the entity and their accountant. But the bottom line is, make it crystal clear to us who is the legal entity that is applying for the funds.
Great. And Allison, I don't have it right in front of me, but I do feel like when they go through the application process, there are different places where they say who are they, but who is the entity and who is the contact person. So there, I think that yes, agreed with David, make it crystal clear and pay attention to those particular fields when you're filling out the grant.
Okay, are we ready for the next question?
Yes.
All right. Could the grant be used to remodel currently unused space in an existing childcare facility in order to expand capabilities?
Yes.
All right. And next question. Currently working with a provider, is there a direction or stipulations around owning versus leasing a facility?
Not that I'm aware of.
We'll need some expansion on that question. If you want to email us directly and let us know specifically what you're looking at there, we'll try to give you more direction.
Okay.
And this question is about architectural planning. So in regards to the project design on the scoring rubric, are you wanting actual architectural drawings of the facility?
If they are available, it would be very helpful. If nothing else, to give more information and a little bit more of a backing to whether or not this particular project is you know, meeting with the intent of the grant opportunity, and if it is indeed going to be a expansion of capacity in the state of Iowa. So absolutely, if the drawings are available and you can give us some rendering of that, that'd be very helpful.
Okay, next question. Can you go over in-kind funds more? I think they just want a summary of what can be used as in-kind funds.
Do you want me to start, David? Okay. Okay. So in-kind funds would be things that have been perhaps services and wages and services, or labor and services or materials that have been donated toward the goal of this the building or the refurbishing or something like that of the center. So it could be if materials were donated by a local store or a local contractor, if labor is donated by a contractor or a local electrician, you know, business, those things donated by businesses to help get this done, that maybe the organization or the entity did not have to pay cash for, that would be an in-kind or dollar amount. That would be an in-kind match toward the ultimate goal of getting the center built and open. So it's those type of expenses. If design, if there's a design element and an architectural firm donated that, but again, remember, this isn't something that was donated 12 months ago. This is something that's going to be donated in the next, between February 19th and the end of June. Those type of things can count. If you had a furniture store or an office supply store that's going to donate furniture for it, that is an in-kind, that could be used as an in-kind match. So those, I guess, are some examples. It's hard because there are so many different iterations of what could happen, but I hope that it gives some example.
Yeah, the wide range of what in-kind really can mean is part of my hesitation there. And the other was, I'm not sure, because if I say funds, I'm talking about money, specifically, cash and credit lines, that sort of thing. And in-kind, we're specifically talking about non-monetary, donations or contributions. They will have monetary value, and that's what we need you to enumerate for us so that we can know what you're asking to have matched. But in kind, we are talking about the sorts of things that Kathy listed there, and of course, there's many other things that can be contributed that would be potentially qualified as in-kind contributions that could then be matched under the fund.
Next question. Does the purchase of land in addition to new construction qualify?
Qualify as?
I guess qualify for this grant application. If the money is to be used for the purchase of land in addition to new construction. That's all I have under the question.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm interpreting that as you're wondering if the ground underneath the building that you're building would qualify. And yes, I mean, I don't see how we could ask you to do a project like this without being able to put it somewhere. And so yes, it would qualify, but we do need that to be clearly described and enumerated in the application as well.
Great. Molly, let's do one more. If you have one more, I know we're about to the end of our time. So we'll do one more question, and then any questions, if there are remaining questions, we will get those posted, as Allison talked about, on our website and in iowagrants.gov, and get them answered and up as soon as possible. So is there one more, Molly?
Yes. Is there a deadline for when the facility needs to be operational?
No.
No. I mean, there's a deadline for when you need to be using funds by for us to be able to match them. So, I mean, you have to have a project that's well underway. But as far as operational, no. The expectation would be that you're probably wanting to get it moving as quick as possible. And if you're expending the funds in time for us to be able to match them, you're probably making pretty good progress. But there's no deadline as far as you need to have children at the facility on a full-time basis by any certain day.
Okay, Molly, thanks for going through those questions. And I just want to take a second here before we wrap up to thank everybody for your interest, your participation, taking the time to listen and ask your great questions. And again, reach out. I think my contact information is on a lot of things. Allison's is there. We both can definitely connect with David on the questions that we need that insight, and we'll do that as quickly as we possibly can. because we know you need answers in order to know if you're going to be able to move forward. So, so just many thanks, and you know, reach out if you need any help or assistance. And David, Allison, and Molly, and sorry, I additional communications team member. Sorry, I can't remember your name right this minute.
Today.
Okay, thank you all.
You're welcome.
For your time. Okay, and yeah, see ya.